Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, and well, today I got a very amusing, well, no, it's not amusing, it's a really annoying thing to tell you about, but, a reality of where we're getting to in terms of SJW demands. Remember, the first and foremost thing is they don't really want you to play RPGs, right? Their ultimate goal is that any product of Western culture, anything at all to do with the West will someday be destroyed completely. It'll be torn down and will cease to exist, But, for the moment, they just want to keep making it harder and harder for you to feel comfortable with playing RPGs with new people, at least. I mean, again, if you're just staying with a group of friends that you've been gaming for 30 years and none of them have gone woke or gotten TDS or something like that, and they're all still willing to play the way you've always played, then they're not going to have any problem, right? But when other people ask, well, I don't care what the SJWs think, how's it going to affect me? Well, if you're ever going to need to play with other people that aren't, say, a tight-knit group that's been together for decades, then it is going to, it's going to be a matter of time before it affects you. And even if, if you're not thinking of that, well, think of your children, right? And if you don't have children, think of future generations, because they're going to be indoctrinated into this nonsense. They're going to be taught to despise everything you value. That's the goal. The goal is no less than that. They're going to be taught to hate themselves, probably, to hate everything about their culture, to hate you and everything you and that your history stood for. So this is what you're facing. But before I continue, a couple little programming notes, so to say. On Sunday, we're going to be having our episode, our delayed episode. It was delayed because of Valentine's, because it would have fallen on Valentine's Day. So a couple of weeks late, we're having our February, right in time, just the very last day possible, we're having our February episode of Inappropriate Characters. So be sure not to miss it. I think it's going to be, 7:30 Central, as it usually is. So go check it out. If you're not already subscribed to Inappropriate Characters, check out that channel, because there you will see every few weeks you get a show featuring me, Venger Satanis, and Joe Bittman, three of the most controversial, most would-be censored game people in the industry. And we talk about news and controversies, and sometimes we have guest stars and stuff like that. So check us out. I'm sure it'll be an interesting episode as always. Second, I wanted to comment that there is a new RPG Pundit Presents that has just come out yesterday as of this filming. It's RPG Pundit Presents number 104. We are now at 104 issues of RPG Pundit Presents, and it's more medieval authentic secret societies. So this is a book where you have a collection of several different medieval groups, a couple of which were absolutely real, and a couple of others that were kind of real but a bit anachronistic, so it happened a little later. And then one or two that were groups that probably weren't real, but that certainly could have been within the context of the medieval authentic situation. And this book, you can use these organizations. It talks about the group, their history, their secret rituals, their modes of recognition, what they're about, what their goals are. And, some of them are malevolent secret societies, but a lot of them are not really malevolent so much as they have a specific agenda, right? So you have the carpenters, who are the Welsh carpenters, who are basically revolutionaries. Their goal is to eventually overthrow the English crown in Wales and establish a Welsh monarchy. And so, you're depending on, you can transplant that into your game and have it be whatever, equivalent group in whatever your countries are. And then whether they're, there goes Big Chungus. Did you guys see that? My goodness. Oh Lord, she coming. Just so you get a glimpse here. See, Big Chungus lately has taken to occupying refrigerator. She says that she's going to occupy refrigerator until she gets more kibbles. She's just finished her kibbles, and now, as you can see, she's refusing to show her face on camera because, you know, she's in a state of protest over insufficient kibbles for herself, and plans to be in control of the refrigerator for some time to come. It hasn't all been peaceful protests. In particular, several little packages of garlic have been severely vandalized at several occasions. So there you go. There's your big Chungus quotient. Anyways, be sure to check out the gotta get this thing so it fits right now. Okay, I think we got it. Okay. Oh Jesus! Some lunatic shouting outside. All right, it's never boring at Pundit's house. So here we got that's some guy that's doing some drama thing. There's a theater location right in front of my house, like I guess an amateur theater company. They've been doing this lately at weird hours. They're all young people. They do it till quite late at night. Anyway, let's get back to the point. Anyways, check out RPG Pundit Presents number 104. You're going to probably find something in those groups there that you can bring into your own fantasy campaigns. That'll be quite interesting. It's system neutral, essentially. You know, there's very little mechanics in it. It's almost all setting content, information. So you can get it for almost anything. Man, I might have to remake this thing, but I don't want to. I'm getting all kinds of problems. I didn't mute it properly before. I hope this thing is still filming. We're going to have to see at the end if I keep it like this. You guys can see I am not a great filmer to begin with. And then there are all kinds of moments where there are crazy interruptions that try to get in the way of my show. So let's get back to the main part of the topic for tonight, which is, you know, I've been, this is probably not a major thing for you because they're not talking about it for D&D yet, but they've started in other peripheral games, story games type situations. I've seen that there's been a lot of talk about having to make the right preparations, that you should be required to make the right preparations before you start a campaign, you know, for trust and safety or whatever you want to call it, for consent, for all that sort of stuff. And so, you know, for a long time they were talking about the session zero and how, you know, to me, session zero, when I say session zero, I'm talking about a session where instead of actually having an adventure, we're just, everybody's creating characters. And so we create the characters and we get to know what they are. Then we stop there. So it's usually a short session. And that way I know what the characters are like before we continue with the first actual adventure of the campaign. I think for a lot of you guys, that's what session zero would be too. But not for them. To the SJWs, session zero is this kind of wild situation of discussing what are going to be the themes of the campaign, right? And where all the players should get to have a say in what the campaign looks like, what is in it, what is not in it, what's allowed in it, what's not allowed in it. And that's been the way that they've looked at session zero for a long time, right? It was about it was almost like a union negotiation where the players are making demands of the DM and the DM has to concede, or else he's a bigot or something like that, right? And of course, as it's gone on, as the SJW movement has gone on, the demands have become more absolute, and the punishments for a DM that doesn't dare to do what every little prima donna player wants become more severe. But now, in this last little while, there's been some talk about how really you can't just have one session. And so somebody pointed out that you have to have a session before session zero. Because there needs to be a session before session zero where there should be established what are the allowed talking points that everybody agrees with could be discussed in a session zero. And that quickly evolved to a discussion of saying there should actually be another before that. There needs to be first a trigger warning session. So you have to have apparently 3 sessions, 3 full sessions. You know, this is most people, these guys don't have jobs. Most of them. I mean, they're almost everyone who's an SJW is either a full-time permanent student or living with their parents and essentially doing nothing. Like they pretend to, I don't know, have a business doing art or something, but they're not. Or they are sex offenders, or they're teachers. Those are pretty much the professions of SJWs, right? The last one is the really scary one, especially considering the second last one, right? But for other reasons too, because there are enormous numbers. Like if you look at the Antifa arrests, enormous numbers of these people are in education. And I'm not talking about professors. I'm not talking about like Professor Bikelock, who nearly murdered a person, and he was like a Berkeley professor of political sciences or something like that. I'm talking about somebody who attacked people with knives in the middle of a free speech protest, and it turns out that she's like a kindergarten teacher, right? I'm talking about people that have shouted "No USA" at all, and they're working as special needs students assistants, or I'm talking about someone who might have had a protest sign talking about how whiteness must be exterminated, and she's a health teacher or something like that, or what would you call it? Social studies teacher at an elementary, right? And so these are people that are super, super dangerous because they are essentially cult members that have infiltrated schools in order to pre-program children to believe the cult, right? And to serve the future cult. It's horrifying. But anyway, so they've decided now. So these people, most of these people have no real work. Even teachers now, they don't work. The teachers have now decided they never want to go to work again, right? They just want to keep being paid to be teachers, but that's not one. That they're not actually going to teach anybody in person. How dare you? So they kind of. I guess it could kind of make sense for them to envision that it would be perfectly fine to spend 3 weeks having a meeting, once every, or to have 3 days in a row where you're not working and you just do it all in 3 days, right? But for most people, it's going to be like, most people can game once a week if they're lucky, right? Maniacs like me, right? That also, I have a job. My job pays really well. This has, by the way, been like my best month of my entire career, and I'm doing spectacularly well making RPGs, right? And I do work really hard because there are, when I'm in the middle of writing RPGs, there are times when I'm working, like I literally sit down, I'm doing 12 hours of writing, which is just, by the end of it, it destroys you. But, I also have a lot of free time. So I get to run maybe 2 games a week, right? And because I don't have another hobby to engage with that would, replace that second game. So most people telling most people, look, before you're allowed to run even one session, you have to do 3 previous sessions, which are, by the way, meant to torture you. That's their goal. Their goal is to make it really hard on you. They're just not going to play. And of course, the SJWs themselves aren't going to play because they don't play. They sometimes pretend they do. They might have played once or twice, right? They never run campaigns. Story games are made not to be run as campaign. They're made at most to be played at one-shots, but mostly meant to be products that you can say, look, I know of this game. Look at how special I am, and that's it. So these are non-gamers that are dictating terms to gamers. And how much do you want to bet? How long is it going to be before that becomes part of the kind of official canon of a 6th edition D&D that has been taken over by the extreme left? So what they're going to do to you is this. They're going to say, if you're doing tournament play or something, you're probably going to have to, if you're doing in organized play, they're probably going to require that you go through 3 of these Maoist-style struggle sessions before you're allowed to engage in any organized play. So they can be sure, they're going to say, oh, well, it's for your own good too, because we'll know what your triggers are and all this, right? And so the idea will be, before you play in any campaign, you're going to have to first have a meeting with everybody else involved where everybody lists what are their hard triggers. And so they're not allowed, things that you're not allowed to bring up at all, right? And that is, you're not allowed to say no to that, and you're not allowed to even question that, right? So if someone says that a hard trigger for them would be fights. You're not allowed to have fights in the campaign. Like, they're like, oh no, I abhor violence, because violence is, misogynist. Then that's it. You're not allowed to say. You might be allowed to ask for an elaboration. So maybe you could ask, well, wait, do you mean like you don't want there to be scenes of violence against women? And then they might they might offer you an answer. They might say, oh, I don't want to comment. I just don't want fights, right? And then you can't have fights in your game, right? Because it is in their cult, in their insane apocalypse religion. It is you're not allowed to question the feelings of any of the special people, right? They're the only people that are allowed to have their questions, their feelings questioned or their feelings attacked are the evil ones, right? And we all know who the evil ones are: straight white males, right? But even then, a straight white male leftist will still be able to say, well, this is a trigger, and as long as everyone believes them. Like, the problem is, the only people that are allowed, that you're allowed to attack, are the people that refuse to accept the terms of the cult, right? The non-cultists. They're the ones you're allowed to attack. Because even if, a guy could have a black guy or a Asian woman, if they say this is stupid, then all of a sudden you're going to see the SJW saying, well, you're a white male. And the Asian woman will say, no, I'm not. She goes, no, but you are, because you've internalized your racism. You are promoting whiteness, right? You're promoting heteronormativity, right? and then that they'll magically un-Asian that woman into a white male, So that's session 1, right? Where everybody will have to list anything that they absolutely do not want in the game. And the DM and every other player will have to make sure to comply with that, because they all have to be very aware of what these things are, right? So then the second session, the second struggle session, is the one where everybody comes together to talk about what are or will not be what would be the allowed topics to discuss in session 0 about what you're going to make the themes of the game, right? So people are there to negotiate whether or not certain things are going to be able to be considered for being part of the campaign in session 0, right? So this is the session before session 0. So, for example, if someone really wants the theme to include, cooking, then they, I guess, could promote the fact that one of the things that they really want to see in this campaign is for people to be doing, to be spending a lot of time in kitchens cooking things and having conversations while they're cooking things, because, that's something important to them as a insert, sex, gender, sexuality group here. And then somebody else might say, well, I want one of the campaign's themes to be about fighting against oppression, and everybody will go, oh wow, of course, fighting against oppression, right? And someone might say there, well, I don't want there to be orcs. So it's not that they're triggered by orcs, but they think orcs are black people, because the person who said this is fundamentally racist. So they're going to be insisting that there be no black people, aka orcs, in the campaign, because they're racists, right? And even if everyone else realizes how insane what this SJW is saying sounds like, they're still going to be forced to go along with that, right? And so that you cannot have the theme of orcs in the campaign, and so on and so forth, right? Obviously, there'll be people talking about how they want it to be about their half Asimar, half genocide, tabaxi, trisexual bard / sorcerer, and how important the backstory is going to be to the campaign. That's something that they have to discuss, right? And then in the third and final session, the list having been formed of the only appropriate and allowed subjects to discuss in the actual session 0, that's when you work out what all of those points are going to be, how they're going to look like in the campaign. And so the implication here is that the DM, after this, can't throw in surprises, right? This is the thing that you must talk about in this campaign. Nothing else, right? Certainly nothing that's in the trigger discussion that happened at the beginning, at the first of the 3 struggle sessions. Nothing that was not pre-discussed and included in the second of the struggle sessions, right? So this is part of the technique of controlling the DM. The idea that the DM is the tyrannical, patriarchal, hierarchical oppressor, and that he has to be kept under the control of the collective of woke players, which a lot of times won't be a collective of woke players. It'll be a collective of normal gamers that really don't understand why we have to do this, and then like one or two ultra SJW Maoists who would probably like to see all the people around them in the table sent to a gulag and then shot in the back of the head. But since they can't do that yet because they still don't have enough power, they're going to have to wait. Let's hope maybe when Kamala is when something happens to Biden, maybe by then. But sooner or later, that's the plan, right? But for right now, what they're going to do is make your life miserable at this gaming table, right? So like two people will end up dictating. They're pretending that it's more democratic in some way, but it isn't, right? It's not more, consensus is never democratic. They always talk about consensus as though it's a fairer system, right? It's fairer even than majority rules, because when you have majority rules, you could have 51% of people controlling what 49% do. Yeah, well, then I guess you've just made a great argument for the Electoral College, haven't you? But then they pretend like consensus is actually much more fair because it means everybody has an equal voice and everybody's feelings must be considered, except it never turns out that way, right? What consensus really turns out like is that the loudest voice in the room with the most social virtue pressure to apply will end up being the voice that controls and dominates everything, right? It isn't the Israeli kibbutz, it's Stalin, right? Stalin dictating in the name of the people what is or is not allowed. And outside of Stalin's word, nothing is allowed, right? That's what you're going to get in every session. So this is the notion, right? If they don't scare you away after 3 Maoist-style struggle sessions where you have to make political confessions and explain what you want to, where you get told really if you're the DM, you're being told most of the time what you are or are not allowed to do as a DM, what you are or are not allowed to include, what themes you must then explain, what themes you will present. And God help you if you present a theme that offends someone. And those themes will be carefully discussed so there's no surprises in the campaign, right? And then after that, in actual play, they will hold that against you. And if you deviate in any way, one of them could claim that they've been offended and possibly, I don't know, if this is an organized play situation of some kind, get you kicked out, right? And if it isn't, then they could go and shame you on social media and try to hunt you down. You will lose your job over a game that you DM'd where somebody felt that you were not respecting their super specialness of being a left-wing activist, right? So what's the lesson of all this? Well, these people are insane. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2 is don't buy anything from people who despise you, right? Any product that has a section that advises you to do this kind of bullshit, do not buy that product. That game has been compromised. It has the cancer. The aliens have taken it over, right? The cultists are inside the building, and you have to not support that product, right? Because that is a product that is making war on you. A war that ultimately ends with killing fields and gulags. That's their ultimate goal. There's no question about that at this point, right? Because we're now getting very close. Like we're so super close at this point with the, we saw what happened with Coca-Cola and stuff, right? With the why can't you just be less white? There's one step between that and the idea, we have to get a final solution for whiteness, and nothing's going to cut it because it's impossible to ever deprogram yourself from actual, supremacy. So really the answer, I'm sorry, but the answer is we have to, you all have to disappear, right? You have to be disappeared. Right? So this is going to come eventually. It's going to come, right? If these people aren't stopped beforehand. But for right now, don't buy products from these maniacs, right? And then in terms of your own games, when you're running games, you can't be afraid of this, but you have to be very clear. The first moment some idiot at your table starts, lifting their hand up, and unless you're absolutely sure they're joking, and starts talking about trigger words and about, 3 sessions before session 0, or starts talking about, allowed themes or discussion about diversity in the game or stuff like that. I'm not talking about someone someone coming up to you personally and asking about something, and you can tell when someone's being sincere. If there's something you're doing, because you could be doing something as a DM that'll bother them, right? That they're not comfortable with. And if they come to you in private, they come and they talk to you, you don't want to say, oh, screw off, snowflake, you lousy commie or something like that. If what you realize is that, maybe you did something, maybe you didn't do anything really, but the person, if the person is, let's say it's somebody that has a horrific fear of spiders, and you did a bunch of spiders, but he never told you for that. He tells you, look, I've got a genuine psychological issue on spiders. If the guy tells you that, right, then maybe you don't want to have a spider in your game from then on, right? If you like the guy otherwise as a player, there's reasonable stuff, and anybody with common sense can see. That's the thing. We all can see what the SJWs are doing. Everyone can tell that these assholes don't mean it. Everybody. Because there's an instinctual human quality where we can tell when we're being sold a load of bullshit, right? We know these guys don't believe what they're saying. We know they're doing it just to have power. Right? That's why so many people are pissed off about the quarantines, because we know that the politicians are manipulating. I'm not saying, note YouTube, that I am not saying that there isn't a pandemic. There is. I'm not saying that, it's not a serious problem, but I am saying that there are people that are taking political advantage from that, right? And we know it instantly, right? Between that and, say a grieving wife whose husband of 60 years died, right? Like from the virus, right? Those are two totally different things, right? So you can tell, you as a normal human being have a sense of when a person talking to you is expressing, like, pay attention to them, look at them, right? And look and see if they're expressing a genuine emotion. And some extremely good liars might be able to fool you once, but you'll get it after a little bit, because SJWs never stop. They're psychotic cultists, right? They can't ever stop. So if they trick you once, if you think, well, this person's expressing a sincere concern, and why not? What does it hurt me? I'm going to listen to them. They said that they're deeply troubled by hobbits because they have a cousin who's a midget or something like that, and it offends them. And you say, well, I wasn't going to use hobbits anyways, right? So that's fine. But then they come back to you, they're like, oh yeah. And also, I think that it doesn't make a lot of sense that this country full of Vikings doesn't have any black Vikings. Then you'll suddenly notice, you were fooled the first time, right? So the point is, if it's a person being sincere, you listen to them. If it's one of these other people, if you realize that this is someone who has joined the cult, you get rid of them, because there's no point in letting them ruin your game, right? You don't put up with this. You don't let them. You don't stand for it. And is there a risk of them attacking you on social media? Yeah, but you know what? If you just laugh, nothing can happen, right? You just have to stand up to these people. If everybody were to stand up to these people, it'd be over today. If everybody stood up to them, it would be done, So just be bold, right? And if something does happen, well, tell me about it. I'll try to do my best to help you, If you're in a job where you can get fired for the wrong kind of thought, you probably should think about having a different job. Go get into business for yourself, right? Or do something else with people that trust you enough to know that some rando on Twitter calling you a racist doesn't mean you're a racist, right? Or something like that. You're in the wrong place. If you're in a place where you're vulnerable to these people, you're in a wrong place. So that's it basically for today. I hope you'll subscribe if this is the first time you're here, or if you just haven't hit the subscribe button yet. I hope you'll like this video and share it everywhere where you think people will be benefited by this message, by this warning, if you would, or where you think people will be pissed off by it, because that's always fun too. Be sure to check us out on Sunday on Inappropriate Characters. And be sure to, if you want to support me, besides subscribing and besides sharing this video, which are great ways to support me, you could also give me money, right? And you could do that by there's a PayPal button in the link below in the description below, and there's a Patreon, and I've had a few new Patreon people lately for some reason, and that's great. I love, I'm very thankful to you. My Patreon doesn't give you anything special, so you're literally just signing up as a patron because you want to support me. And so I'm super thankful to the people that do that. But as far as I'm concerned, one of the best ways to support me in a way that is also beneficial to you is buying my stuff, buying my books, like, like Star Adventurer or Dark Albion or the Old School Companion. Any of my books have stuff that you're going to be able to use in your games. My OSR stuff can be used in any D&D derived game. Even if you're not going to use like the whole setting or the whole rule set, there's stuff you can take out and put into your stuff. I have 104 issues of RPG Pundit Presents, each one of which is a PDF that goes anywhere between like 2 to 30 pages. So like, for example, RPG Pundit Presents 104, the newest one, is I think 18 pages, and it features a half dozen secret societies that you can bring into your fantasy setting or your medieval setting or your medieval fantasy setting or your historical setting too, for that matter. So any of those would be useful to you. But if you don't like the sound of medieval secret societies, there's 103 other books out there. You're going to find something that you can use, and if you pick it up, it's like you're buying me a coffee, and at the same time you're getting something back for yourself, right? So I think it's a good deal, because I have pretty much confidence that if you pick a subject that's kind of a subject you think you would like, you're probably going to like what I've done with it. Anyways, thank you very much, and we'll see you guys soon. We'll see you on Sunday probably. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Hawkbill plus Argento Natural.